Hello and welcome to Berry Aftercare. I am your host, Dr. Connie Stapleton. I've been in this field of bariatric medicine for a very, very long time, about 17 years at this point. Anyway, I am super excited to be with you tonight. We're continuing this very long series on self-care. Tonight, specifically, we're going to be talking about assertiveness and using assertive communication. We're going to do a couple of specific things tonight as we talk. We're going to first talk about what it means to be assertive. Then we're going to talk about how being assertive can affect your weight journey and your entire quality of life. Finally, we're going to talk about what you can do to increase your assertive communication, your assertive behaviors, and positively impact your weight journey and your overall quality of life. Because if you know me, if you've been listening to me, you know that this whole weight loss journey is an important part of improving your entire quality of life. You want to live at a weight that's healthy for your body so that you can do the things in life you want to do. Beyond that, though, I want you to be assertive and get the things in life that you want without being unhealthy about it. So that's what we're working on, in addition to, of course, getting you to a place where you're healthy with your weight. So assertiveness and your weight. So we talked about boundaries last week or a couple of weeks ago. We talked about being a people pleaser. So if you want to continue to work on setting those healthy boundaries, if you want to continue to get away from being a people pleaser, then you need to commit to your self-care using assertiveness skills. Now, don't you be fretting, because I know some people are thinking, oh my God, assertiveness, and you're equating it with aggression. Assertiveness is not the same as being aggressive. It's not being rude. It's not being nasty. It's not causing conflict, at least on your part. Remember, we're never responsible for what another person says, does, thinks, feels in relation to what we or anybody else does. But we are responsible for our behavior. So the healthiest kind of communication a person can engage in is called assertive behavior. Now, being your best self means learning to be an adult, learning to be a healthy adult. And age does not determine adultness. Behavior determines whether or not you're a healthy adult or not. We want to increase our ability to be healthy adults. Myself and many other people were not taught to be healthy adults because our role models, love us though they might, were not always the healthiest people and not always available to show us the healthiest communication skills, the healthiest way to ask for things, the healthiest way to set boundaries, because they didn't know them either. So it's not that they were bad people or didn't love us or didn't want the best for us, because I believe that all parents want that for their children. They didn't have the skills to pass on in a lot of cases. But that doesn't mean we're not responsible as our own adult to learn those skills, to improve our relationships with other people, and to prevent the crop from rolling down the hill, right? In other words, we want the next generations to be healthier in terms of communication, lifestyle, all of it, than we were shown and that our parents were shown, and so on and so on. So, being your best self means learning to adult, to be a healthy adult, which means learning to overcome those fears you have of being direct, of being assertive, of asking for what you want, of asking for what you need, of setting those boundaries, of not being a doormat. It is scary, but a healthy adult is willing to learn how to go about these things and is willing to put them into practice. So, if you're not willing to learn assertiveness skills, then what you're doing basically is jeopardizing not only your health physically, but the health of your relationships as well. So, you want a healthy lifestyle, you've got to learn to utilize these self-care skills we've been talking about in the past several weeks, including boundaries, including not using people-pleasing behaviors that are upsetting to you in the long run. And tonight we're going to talk about what does it mean to use assertive, healthy communication. All right, so let's start with what does it mean to be assertive? Well, let me say what being assertive is not, because unfortunately, I think there's some confusion and people hear assertive and they automatically hear aggressive. That is not true. They are not the same things. And next video, later this week, we're going to talk about what aggressive communication looks and sounds like. We'll give some examples. But assertiveness is not aggression. But a lot of people are afraid that saying something in a direct way is aggressive. Being assertive is being direct, but it's not at all aggressive. So we're going to talk later in the week about aggressive behavior, about passive behavior, and about passive aggressive behavior, which are not going to be win-win situations. Assertive communication on your part, assertive behavior on your part leads to a clear, direct message that is not open to interpretation, that is not open to saying, well, you never told me that. Because if you're assertive, you're saying things in a clear, specific, direct way. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about how that will impact your weight journey in a healthy way. So assertiveness means expressing your point of view, saying your thoughts, sharing your emotions, sharing what you're thinking and feeling and witnessing in a way that's clear and direct while still being respectful of others. And I think this is the part that people don't associate with being assertive. Aggression, as we'll learn, is not being too respectful of others, but an assertive person is looking for a win-win. I'm going to tell you what I think. I'm going to tell you how I feel. I'm going to tell you without question what I need or want. That doesn't mean another person's obligated to follow through and give you those things, but you're not going to wonder what it is I'm asking of you because I'm going to be clear, specific, and kind. All right, so assertive communication. Here's where it gets tricky. Remember, we're talking about all these things and where you're at with your self-esteem, your self-worth, your self-value, your self-confidence. And last week, when we talked about people-pleasing behavior, we talked about the fact that if you're a people pleaser, chances are good you don't value yourself enough. You don't hold yourself in high esteem. The same with boundaries. If you struggle to set boundaries and engage in that form of self-care, it's indicative of a person who doesn't have a whole lot of self-esteem, healthy self-esteem. Guess what? Assertive communication is the same way. So here's why a lot of us stay stuck in struggling to set boundaries or stay stuck in a people-pleasing rut or don't engage in assertive communication or behavior because we don't feel like we deserve it. We don't feel valuable enough to be heard, to be respected, to be taken with the worth that we have to ask these things specifically. So assertive communication is born of high self-esteem. So again, the bottom line to all of this, including your weight loss journey and your ability to maintain your healthy weight, is based on your level of self-esteem. And if that's kind of sucking, then you need to get some skills. You need to get some training. You need to get some therapy on improving your self-esteem, getting rid of whatever's in the way of your having that self-esteem, whether it's shame, mostly it's shame, or feeling not good enough. Where'd that come from? Figuring it out, letting it go, and then reminding yourself that your value as a human being is equal to every other human being on this planet. So you got to have some pretty good self-esteem to be willing to follow through with assertive behavior and assertive communication. It is by far the healthiest form of communication and also by far the most effective form of communication. We're going to figure out why. All right, you have to have the confidence to engage in this kind of communication. Otherwise, you're going to resort to games and manipulation, which we'll talk about when we talk about the other forms of communication. But when you're assertive, you know your limits. You don't allow yourself to be pushed beyond them just because somebody else wants or needs something else from us, which would make us what? A people pleaser, right? We can still be kind, respectful, consider other people's wants and needs, and be assertive because assertive people do consider the wants and needs of others as well as share their own. So, again, like I said, assertive communication is about trying to get a win win. The benefits of assertive communication are, of course, one of them being that win win. We find a compromise so that you get some of what you want, I get some of what I want. And we both feel like we've been heard, respected, and communicated with. All right, here's some other benefits of assertive communication. It makes difficult decisions easier because I don't have to guess what you're trying to tell me. I don't have to wonder if you have some ulterior motive. You don't have to wonder what I'm saying or wonder if I have ulterior motives. Because if we have a history of being honest and direct with each other, then we can trust. That's one of the benefits, developing trust in one another and our relationship. Also, engaging in assertive communication will help you develop that healthy self esteem, increase your self worth. And that's always good because it gives you a sense of empowerment. Not like I have power over you, but I feel good about what I just did. I don't leave the conversation feeling like, oh God, I'm such a loser. I didn't say what I really wanted to say and I should have. Or, feeling cocky like, well, I just dominated that. That's not a win, right? A win is I said what I needed to say, I said it respectfully, I was very clear about what I wanted or needed, and I feel good about that, regardless of the outcome. I'm pleased and I feel empowered about what I did and how I handled that situation. When you use assertive communication, you do develop trust. And we also have to develop trust in ourselves, not just other people, right? We earn trust from other people and we earn trust from ourselves by being honest. So if we have an honest, assertive conversation, then I feel more trusting of myself and I feel more trusting of you. And it's a good possibility that you're also feeling more trusting of me because there's no game plan between us. So you develop respect from other people and you develop respect for yourself. It's easier to resolve conflict. It's easier to negotiate. It's easier to solve problems when we just lay our cards on the table in a not angry way, not a demanding way, not a um, threatening way at all. It's just, this is what I think. This is what I've been observing. That's the reason I think the way I do. This is what I would like to see happen. That's what assertiveness is. And assertive communication diffuses situations because people who are aggressive are going to increase the conflict. They're going to increase the tension in the room. They're going to increase the um, just the struggle, right? Passive or passive aggressive behavior, there's going to be tension in the air too. But if you're honest and I'm honest and we just say what we need and want and we think, well, how can that person get some of what they want and some of what I want? How can we get that win win? It's not about a fight or a competition or who's right or who's wrong. And here's the thing, when we argue with people, this is a take home message, by the way. When we argue or fight with somebody, it is always, always because we're not getting something we want. So think about that next time you argue with somebody and think, what is it I'm wanting here that I'm not getting? And being assertive, you can say what you want and you need without having to get into conflict about it. And a healthy adult is willing to say, I can't give that to, or willing to hear, I can't give that to you now and accept it. without pounding their fists or having a temper tantrum or throwing a silent treatment, right? Because as healthy adults, we know we're not always going to get what we want. People aren't here to cater to us all the time. Throwing a fit like when you were little, if it worked all through your childhood and your parents always gave in, then that's what you're going to lean to now to try to get your way. Or in my case, in my family, the loudest person won, right? So the louder you could be, the nastier your tongue could be, the meaner you could be. Boy, that was winning in my family. That is so unhealthy, but that's how I came into my marriage because that's what I knew. And I learned in a real hurry that's not going to work. But it took me a long time to break that habit, and I had to learn something to replace it with. It took me a long, long time to be assertive and not aggressive. All right. So when we set boundaries with people, we're being assertive. If we set a very clear boundary, it's not a closed off boundary. It's just saying, you know what? I'm going to shut my door right now. I need some time to think. It's, opening the door and saying, come on in, let's discuss this now. Or maybe it's having a screen door and saying, I'm willing to discuss this, but I don't feel completely safe at this point. That's figurative in case you hadn't figured that out. But we have boundaries and we'll say, I'm worried about having this discussion with you because in the past you've been rather aggressive. And I'm not willing, this is my boundary, I'm not willing to sit in this conversation if you're going to use foul language with me, if you're going to call me names, or if you're going to raise your voice or say mean things. That's my boundary. That's very assertive. It's saying, you're not going to treat me this way because I matter. You matter. I want to hear what you have to say. You matter. I matter too. All right. So when you have assertive behavior, you have an I win. Not I win at the exclusion of you, but I win because I care about myself and you win because I also care about you. So I want this to be an amicable, worked out in whatever way we best can without getting ugly. That's what assertiveness is. So, how can being assertive be positive for your weight loss and your weight maintenance? Well, people pleasers are forever saying, sure, sure, I'll do that. I'll be the one to bring this, or I'll be the one to drive everybody, or I'll pick up the bill, or I'll be on every committee and burn myself out, right? One of the things you can do to be assertive is to say, I'm going to need some time to think about that and I will get back to you. That buys you some time. So if you're a people pleaser and your habit is to constantly give in, this gives you some time to stall, but not stall in an unhealthy way, just to clear your head and talk it over with somebody, a therapist or your friend or, somebody you trust and say, okay, I've been asked to lead this committee. I absolutely do not want to do it because I'm already overextended. I struggle to say no. Can you help me come up with an assertive, healthy response? And then together, you come up with a healthy, assertive response, which is, I feel bad for saying no, but I can't do that committee this year. Check with me again next year because I am interested in this, if that's true for you. And I'll see if anything else has, you know, gone off my already too crowded plate and I can make room for that. So saying, let me think about it. I'll get back to you by Tuesday or whatever it is. Now, I literally had to, this was back before we had cell phones, way back before that. We had long cords on our phones on the walls. And I literally had to put a sticky note to get into the habit of doing this next to my phone on the wall. And the note on the phone said, I'll have to think about that. I'll get back to you by blank. And that's how I learned not to say yes to everybody and everything and worked away from being such a people pleaser. But then I was able to practice what I wanted to say with my husband or my therapist or a friend, and then call back the person and use that healthy, assertive statement. We have to practice, we have to learn, right? Here's another thing. If somebody's giving you feedback and it's unwanted, like maybe they're telling you how you really need to do this bariatric thing, and you really need to do this, or maybe you should try this, or maybe you should blah 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 blah. Blah. Instead of being like, back off. I was told what I need to do by my bariatric dietitian, and just back the heck off. One of the things you can learn to say when somebody gives you feedback, whether you want it or not, whether it's good or not, and this is assertive and kind, say, thank you for your suggestion. I'll take that into consideration. So you're being kind, you're hearing them, you're being respectful by not arguing with them. What's the point? Take what they have to say and really do consider it, because there might be some piece of what they've shared with you that you could use in your life in a productive way. So instead of like being defensive or being placating, like, oh, of course I'll do that. You're thinking to yourself, like when hell freezes over. Say to people who give you feedback, just simply and kindly, thank you for that input. Thank you for your suggestion. I'll take that into consideration. It's a really kind way to do things. Now, here's a boundary one with grandma. It's Thanksgiving. Grandma's made her 2,000 calorie piece of cake filled with lard and white flour and all kinds of sugar and all the things that you don't want in your body anymore. But grandma's feelings are going to be hurt no matter how assertive and kind and loving you are. You still need to do this, right? But you can do it in a kind, tactful, respectful way. So grandma's like, you got to have some of this. I know you had that surgery, but you got to have some of my famous blah, 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 blah. Grandma, I love you. I love your famous cake. But I'm going to tell you that I'm not going to have any this time because my health has to come first right now. Now, grandma's not going to accept that, and she's going to have her feelings hurt, and she may be passive aggressive, and she may be aggressive, and she may pout and throw a fit or whatever she does. That's not your concern. Your concern is being assertive and kind and respectful. All right? Grandma, I love you. I love you so, so, so much. And I have always loved this, your famous whatever it is. Tonight, there won't be any for me because I have to put my health first. End of story. That's assertive, kind, loving. Or you might want to say, or you could say to grandma, I don't want to hurt your feelings, and I'm afraid that this might hurt your feelings, but taking care of my health is the most important thing to me at this time. Again, straightforward, direct, respectful, right? And what grandma does with that, or your boss, or your mother, or your sister, or your whomever, that's not your business. I have a little tiny disagreement going on with my daughter right now, and so I told her directly, straightforwardly, this is what I think. These are the reasons I think this. And she told me the same in a kind and respectful way. And I shared with her how I felt about what she just said, and she did the same. And I ended it with, listen, I will respect whatever you decide. I may not agree with it, but it won't change how I feel about you. I would just like you to take my feedback into consideration. No ugly words, no ugly tone, no passive aggressiveness. Respecting her, she was respecting me, accepting that we have a disagreement about this particular thing, and saying, listen, she's a 36-year-old woman. She can make her own decision. I still have the right to share my thoughts, feelings, and observations with her in a kind and respectful way. So assertive communication, and I think I've shared this in prior videos, but for example, um, we'll use the example of somebody commenting on your weight when you see them. This happened in my life. It was my mother. And anytime there was a period of time when I didn't see her, her very first comment, regardless of what was going on, was about my weight. Same with my 4 sisters. That's what she did. So, an assertive, respectful way to say, back the heck off with the talk about my weight because you're making me crazy and it's ticking me off. That would not be respectful, right? Mom, when the first thing you say to me is in relation to my weight, I feel sad and I feel angry because it appears as though my weight is what you value my worth on. And I would appreciate if you could keep your thoughts about my weight to yourself. Okay? So that was very assertive. And the 4 parts to that conversation are when this happens or when this happened, when you comment on my weight, I feel sad and angry because it appears to me that you're valuing my worth on my weight. I would appreciate if you could keep your thoughts about my weight to yourself. All right. Now, she may or may not accept that. She may or may not appreciate that. She may, whatever. That's not my concern. My concern is my part of the equation. Now, what you want to avoid are statements that go like you. Mom, you just point out my weight every time and you just value me based on my weight and you are rude and you. That's never going to go anywhere, right? So one of the ways to use assertive communication is to say, I feel this, I think this, it appears to me, rather than saying to my mother, you value me based on my weight. I'm making an assumption and I'm accusing her of doing something she may or may not be doing. But if I say, it appears to me that you place your value of me on my weight, based on my weight, that's me saying, this is how it appears to me. Not saying, I know exactly what you're doing and you need, I don't have that right. I have the right to say, this is the situation when blank. This is how I feel. This is the reason I feel that way. And this is what I would appreciate. Perfectly assertive, healthy communication. Those 4 sentence stems, when blank, I feel blank, because blank, I would appreciate blank. Can't go wrong, my friends. I would practice and practice and practice those. Okay, so here are some assertive statements or some assertive suggestions. Share your thoughts, meaning I, not you. You don't say you like I just said. Share your thoughts, your feelings, and your observations. And here's the kicker on this, which is what makes it difficult. Without the expectation of change or agreement from another person. So I can say to my husband, I feel sad when you bring trigger foods into the house. I would appreciate if you wouldn't bring them in. And he may say, oh, I hadn't thought of that. I'll be happy to honor that request. Or he may say, too bad for you. I live here. I can bring whatever I want in. I'm responsible for how I pose the request. And I'm a whole lot more likely to get a win-win if I say it nicely, right? But again, I may or may not get what I'm hoping for. So be clear and be specific. Kids, I would appreciate if you would get your chips, ice cream, whatever, when you're at the ball game or when you're at school or when you're with your friends. It would mean a lot to me if you would agree for us not to have them in the house, or saying that to the whole family. Or when you're giving feedback to somebody else. I feel sad that you continue to bring this in when I've asked you not to, or I feel angry. Or it seems to me that since I've had the surgery, it seems to me, great phrase, it seems to me that since I've had the surgery, you're bringing home more sweets than you did before, as opposed to accusing. What are you doing? You're just not thinking of me. You're just bringing more crap into this house than you ever have. That's not going to work, right? But if I say, I might be wrong about this, but it seems to me like there are more sweets in this house than there ever had before. I would really appreciate it if you would make an effort to keep them out of my view. I know you're getting what I'm saying, and you're smart enough to do this yourself. Yes, it takes effort. It still takes me quite a bit of effort, and I don't do it right all the time. But every time I do, I feel better about myself. And that's one more reason how this can impact your weight. So let's say I'm upset with my husband or I'm angry with him and I just kind of lose it on him like I used to back in the old days. We've been married 39 years. And so over 39 years, I've learned and grown a lot. But back in the early days, I did what I knew to do, which was what are you thinking? How could you have said such a stupid thing? You know, mean out of my mouth, right? When I would do that, after I started learning in therapy that that's not a real healthy way to do things, and I'm not going to get a good response from him, and he's not going to respect me, and I'm not going to respect me, and I'm going to feel bad when I do that. What happens when you feel bad about what you do? You want to feel better. And if you're an emotional eater, then going to food is what would make you feel better. So, one of the reasons that this can negatively affect your weight loss or your weight maintenance is if you behave or respond or communicate in unhealthy ways. And now that you know a bit more about what healthy communication is, maybe you're going to feel guilty or you're going to feel ashamed of your behavior. You're going to feel unhappy with yourself. And that may lead to emotional eating, which of course leads to weight gain. Stress does not lead to weight gain, my friends. Eating leads to weight gain. So, what you can do to increase assertive behaviors and positively impact your weight journey and, of course, your overall quality of life. Do what we talked about last week and start saying no and setting boundaries. Hopefully, you've taken initiative and you've done some reading about setting boundaries. I'm going to ask you to do the same this week about assertive communication. One of the best things you can do is when you know you want to bring something up to somebody, especially the more emotional the relationship is, meaning your significant other, your children, your parents, anybody in your family, a best friend. There's a lot of emotion related to those relationships or involved in those relationships. So practice. Write down what you want to say. Get some input from somebody you trust and say, does this sound assertive? Does this sound passive? Does this sound passive aggressive? How does this sound? I want it to sound assertive. I want it to be respectful of the other person. I want to respect myself by being direct and concise. And then fake it till you make it. You may be shivering in your shoes because you're scared when you go to do it. But if you've written it out, if you've practiced it in the mirror or practiced it with somebody else, look and act and stand confidently. Use body language that says I mean business, not aggressive, but listen, I'm telling you this and I mean it, and I would really appreciate you taking this seriously and giving some consideration to what I have to say. What that says is I have value and I value my value. I value you and I would like you to value me. So start small. Be assertive in situations where there's not much to get nervous about. You might not want to go to your mother with something big and emotional, but you might want to say to somebody in the office, I would appreciate if when you're finished with the copier, if you would tell me so that I can copy it, whatever it is. something that doesn't have a lot of emotion involved in it. But seriously, practice it. Write it down. Get feedback from somebody else, a therapist, a life coach, somebody who's got a little more practice with being assertive, and tweak it. Feel good about yourself when you do it. And when we feel better about ourselves, we behave better toward ourselves. And that means food, exercise, nutrition, nourishment, self care, saying no, setting boundaries, all the things, right? So, what we're doing here is improving how we feel about ourselves, increasing our value, because the bottom line with weight, barring medical issues, barring medication impact, et cetera, the part of our weight that's related to our own behaviors. The better we feel about ourselves, the better our behaviors toward ourselves will be. That's a positive outcome when it comes to losing weight and maintaining weight loss. All right, so take home messages first. Assertive communication is by far the most positive because it's geared toward win-win, respect, respect. Being assertive, it really helps others know exactly what you mean. It leaves little room for confusion. So when you set boundaries with others about your health, no, I don't go to that kind of restaurant. No, I stay away from buffets. No, thank you. Please don't offer me sweets at the office. No, thank you. Please don't invite me to order out from, the restaurants in town. For lunch, I bring my own. Assertive, direct, kind, right? People know exactly what you mean. There's no guessing. And thirdly, practice those assertive conversations ahead of time and fake it till you make it. So I have invitations for you this week. Of course, personally, probably selfishly, but not really. Because honestly, I want everybody to develop a better sense of self. So I do invite you to invite others to this podcast because, as you know, it's not all about weight loss. It's not just about how to live a healthy life after bariatric surgery. It's how to live a healthy life as a human being. And because this is about bariatric surgery, we tie it into how these healthy behaviors as a human being and a healthy adult affect your weight. And I would also like to invite you to make some positive, assertive, direct statement that you would like to make to somebody. Write it down, practice it, and then deliver it. And pay attention to how they respond. Pay attention to how you feel when you do that. And it will help you continue to do it more often. If you get a negative response from somebody, process it with somebody else and make sure that your delivery was clear and precise. All right. So until our next video this week, where we're going to talk about passive communication, passive aggressive communication, and aggressive communication, and how those will negatively affect your weight loss journey and your relationships with other people and yourself. Remember, we're talking about your health, and your health matters this day and every day, and it's your responsibility. Now, if you want to hear that second talk, you've got to become a member of Berry Aftercare. And Berry Aftercare is more than a second video every week. It's a series of text messages throughout the day to keep you encouraged, to help educate you about living your best healthy adult life. And it's articles and it's a lot of information that is not available strictly on this podcast. So I invite you to go to www.berryaftercare.com, bring your friends with you, and I will see you later this week. In the meantime, make it a great one, my friends. Take care.